What's going on, guys? Today we're going to be making a drinking cup for D&D that I'm calling the Battle Mug. I started by cutting down boards to the height of the mug on the miter saw. The wood I'm using for this project is called Red Heart, which originates in South America and Mexico, which I think is really fitting for this project because I'm a big Corona fan. Next, I moved over to the table saw to cut them into their final strips. Both sides were cut at an angle, that way they can be glued together to form a circle. I am keeping the thickness of the wood at 3/4 of an inch, which is abnormal for a cup like this, but this gives me the room to grip the steel and hopefully not break it when I go to use it as an axe. The problem now is that 3/4 inch rim around the cup wouldn't be enjoyable to drink out of, so I cut the top of the wood at a steep angle to match most standard mugs that you would use. For the bottom portion, I cut out the same shape the cup would end up once it's together, then notch each individual strip to fit that piece into. For this, I used the Shaper Origin, which is a handheld router / CNC combo. It's a really awesome tool, but it is way overkill for this project and could be done with a bunch of other woodworking tools, but since I already have something like this, it made my life easier and a lot harder for me to mess up a cut. Now it was time for the glue up. I squared up all the pieces over top some painter's tape, that way they could roll together. I'm not gonna lie, this is probably the worst glue up I've ever done. I used way too much glue and had to clean up a lot of squeeze out. Thankfully, everything went together okay and it turned into one solid piece. The bottom was slightly uneven and I squared that up on the miter saw. Next, I started to sand down all the edges to get a more circular shape. The inside was harder to sand, so I put some sandpaper on a scrap piece of wood and was able to get in there a lot better. Once everything was sanded to a 220 grit, I used a few coats of shellac on the outside, and I really love using this because it brings out the natural color of the wood. On the inside, I used this epoxy by Art Resin, which seems to be a really good epoxy for a food grade finish. After pouring it into the cup, I spent some time spinning it back and forth to get a nice even coat. Then I just set it in my 3D printer to let it cure. Next up was cutting all the steel and getting it to fit around the cup. I recently got an oxyacetylene torch set up, so I was able to use that to heat up all the metal. It helps to hammer around an object to the shape that you want it to be, and luckily I had a piece off of my metal chop saw that was the exact size of my cup, so I was able to use that to bang on. I also made these forks to go in my vise to help bend the metal as well. Once I got them fitting on the cup, I marked out where I needed to cut them to fit against the piece of steel that was going to hold the axe head. Then I was able to weld it all together. For the handle, I used a 3/4 inch steel bar. Pretty much the same process of heating and bending, but I did have to make a bigger set of forks to wrap around the bar. There was definitely a lot of bending back and forth to get this to fit properly, but I eventually got it, cut it down to size, and welded it on. I decided to try and cut the axe head with the cutting tip on my torch since it was a 1/2 inch thick and it would have taken forever on the grinder. This was the first time using the cutting tip though, and honestly it scared the hell out of me. I couldn't keep a straight line and it was shooting liquid metal all around. I ended up stopping even though I wasn't cut all the way through and banged it off the rest of the way just because I didn't want to use it anymore. There's a lot more I still need to learn with that torch. I don't think I had the regulator set properly for the cutting tip, and I should have been wearing some extra safety gear, not a pair of shorts. To shape the axe, I pretty much just went back and forth between my disc sander and my angle grinder until I was happy with the shape. I also filed down and grinded grooves on the tip of the blade to act as a bottle opener. Once it was into its final shape, I heat treated the blade of the axe by getting it red hot and quenching it in water right away to cool it down. Then I threw it into the oven to temper it. Doing all this different heat treatment actually helps strengthen the steel and will stop the blade from deforming over time. At least I think so, and I'm hoping I'm doing it right. I watch a lot of blacksmithing videos on YouTube, but I'm actually gonna start taking classes so I know what the hell I'm talking about. Once the blade was done cooking, I could attach it to the rest of the steel, but I had to make sure the blade was in the right spot for the bottle. So I decided to tack weld it first and test it, and once I knew it was good, I can go ahead and weld it the rest of the way. Next, I cleaned up all the steel with a degreaser, that way I can do some cold blowing which darkens the steel. This stuff goes on super easy with a sponge brush. I did only one coat, but depending on how dark you wanted it, you could do multiple coats to get it to that point. I then filed down the blade of the axe to make it sharper, but also get the edge to have a bare steel look, which I think makes it pop a little bit more. For rust protection, I ended up using shellac on the steel. I couldn't really find if this was the right alternative to use or not. There's a bunch of other things you can use, but I already have this on hand, and I figured why not try it out. Then the only thing left was to glue the two pieces together. And with that, the project was done. Of course, I did have to test out all of its intended uses. I had a lot of fun making this project. I recently got into D&D and I'm playing a barbarian half-orc who's an alcoholic, so this definitely fits my character pretty well. I do a lot more behind the scenes stuff on my Instagram, so if you're interested in that, be sure to check me out there. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, be sure to like and subscribe, and with that, I'll see you guys in the next one.